All right, looks like it's live now, or going live. I don't know, where does it actually start when I said what part words? I don't know, I'll figure that out later. Welcome to number 211. Wow, that's a lot. And there's a lot of you here. Welcome. Let's see, what do we have here? Hey everybody. Lots of people, more fellow waiters. Sitting here trying to decide to build a new Unraid machine and convert my old one to TrueNAS or leave my Unraid alone. You know, I just don't use Unraid. I don't have anything against it. Just make sure we're clear on that. That's one of those things that people think if you don't like something, you must hate it. If you use an opposing product, you must have some fundamental problem with the other product. Just one of those weird things that seems to happen a lot in technology. And yeah, I don't always know what to say about that. That's one of those, why do you hate this? Well, I don't. I just happen to like the other product. Anyways, let me think. What was I going to ramble about? Many things. I did laugh because it seems though I posted a video this morning about my thoughts on WireGuard, because people always say, what's your thoughts on something? My thoughts are the microphone wasn't pointed the right way. But I also threw that WireGuard video, and it's like right away someone complained that they didn't like it or whatever. And I don't know. It's one of those things like I just wanted to be honest about WireGuard and put it somewhere. And the reason why is because I've talked about that same thing. So any of you watching the live stream, if you're a regular live stream watcher, don't bother watching the WireGuard video. You didn't learn anything I didn't say in the live stream. Because the problem I have though with the live stream is I don't take the time to time index when I said what. And if no one else does, people ask questions. Hey, that's a 2-hour stream, but Tom talked about something in there. What's the time index? Even Tom didn't track that time index. So anyways, that's one of the reasons I did that dedicated video to kind of the problems with WireGuard, so to speak. And it's not that it's a fundamental issue with it or a security issue or anything like that, but it's an issue, of course, because yeah, it's like the integration right away. And it was just funny, and what made me think of it was the comments that came on the pfSense video I did about WireGuard, the comments that are over on Reddit about pfSense getting WireGuard and people wondering where the integration is with all those other things. Yeah, so. You don't have enough. There is a constant but somewhat reported myth. You don't need as much RAM as you think. And let me point that out, is the myth of, oh my gosh, there's no possible way, Tom. This can't possibly work. And we'll log into one of my systems real quick here, because I have one that's an absolutely great example. Let me pull up the login and we'll switch screens. Where is, if we switch to this? There we go. Oh my gosh, Tom, there's no way. Look at this. You have 8 gigs of RAM. There's no possible way you could have still 12 terabytes free on this. There's just, it can't work, according to people in forums that tell me there's no way to run this system. By the way, services is 4.3 gig and the cache is 3.2 gig right now. But yeah, you can run... Absolutely can. Proof positive. This has been running for a while. This is 4 10 terabyte drives in this system right here. And yeah, it will absolutely work with only that minimal amount of RAM. And this is what I've been running my Steam box. Part of the reason I even keep this system doing this is to prove those people wrong in the forums that are saying, there's no way you can do it. It just won't work. It'll fail. And okay, that's nice to know. So that's my, let's see. That's one of my answers for that. So can you map a drive for TrueNAS replication read-only? You can do, I don't know about mapping a drive because I'm not understanding what you're asking there, but you can, by default, the replication's essentially read-only on the destination server. That's like the default setup. So what kind of vodka am I drinking? None yet. Too early for that. Yes, for home lab or something a bit like Plex. Now, RAM does affect performance. So Is that the best performing machine? No, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that is some blazing fast system, but it depends on your goal. My goal is I needed somewhere to store my son's 12 terabytes of Steam stuff. That's a good place for it right there. So it works for that. He's got a 20 terabyte share on his system for his games, and yes, it's only over 1 gig, but it plays fine. So the goal was lots of storage. Let's see. Yeah, streaming media for it. Yes, that's what is going to work fine too. Oh, Tom, the Citrix. Yes. I should probably get rid of my Citrix videos. If it wasn't for them, I should go modify them all to say watch Zen XCP-ng Zen videos. Don't watch Citrix Zen. Citrix made a decision that surprised everyone. And Citrix didn't think the world would do something about it. So Citrix decided that here's your Zen server with your features. And they had a bigger following than maybe they had wrapped their head around. I don't know. Who knows what led to this product decision. But there was a bunch of features that Zen server had that were base features. And then they upsold you on a license to get the enhanced features. And then they went and did a point upgrade. Like, I think it was like 7.1 to 7.2 or 7.2 to 7.3. It was a point upgrade in the 7 series. Pretty minor upgrade. And when you upgraded, you lost all those features that were included in the free license version. And people are like, wait a minute, how did my servers missing all these features? Why is this broken and this broken and this broken? Why is everything bugging me to buy a license now every time I click on it? Yeah, they decided that, all those things that were part of the terms and conditions, well, we updated the terms and conditions when we did a point release. So that thing that said upgrade, when you click the upgrade, then there was the panic of don't upgrade your Zen server because the only way to upgrade is to agree to the new terms and conditions because, well, they nerf all the features and make you buy an expensive license now that they didn't have before. And that's what was the birth of XCP-ng. They're going, fork it and move over, and Citrix, see you later, because this is a disaster, and obviously you've angered the user base. So that was what basically happened over there. So that's the history, so to speak. Yeah, turn on dedupe and you'll need more RAM and TrueNAS. That is true. William, thank you very much for the $4 donation. It is greatly appreciated. Can you add your tutorial using spares on ZFS for recovery? I'm going to make one on like the hot spares and how that's handled. I think for most people, that's why I wanted to at least get the replacement video out there, which I did the other day. But the hot spares is a different topic. Because I know it's probably less common for the home lab people to buy hot spares. That's more of an enterprise thing. But yeah, it's not a bad idea. I'm working on right now a whole lot more TrueNAS videos. I'm making a series, and that's going to be the first series posted on my new website. It's going to be on YouTube, but the new website's going to start indexing and organizing all the data. So that's going to be kind of fun too. Similar to Red Hat with CentOS, yeah. This is not something that's uncommon in the marketplace for these changes to happen by companies. So that's definitely a challenge. I haven't had the time to really dig into TP-Link Omada, but anything I looked at it doesn't look like a UniFi replacement. I might do a review on it because the home users probably would use it. I don't think I would ever deploy it, but then of course when I never deploy anything, that only gives you a very limited review. I don't have any use case that makes me think it's... Matter of fact, it seems as broken in interface-wise, like the not being able to assign multiple IPs to WAN. Like they must have just copied the code from over at UniFi. Like, why would you start a product with features and limitations that the company you're kind of trying to compete with already has? If you're going to write software, why write the limitations like that? I don't get it. But, yeah. I don't use OpenStack. So... if you use OpenStack, awesome. I don't use it. I don't really plan to use it. I don't know anything good or bad about it. TrueNAS scale, it's possible to use a single NVMe obtained for L2 ARC. You can use a single one in TrueNAS in general. TrueNAS scale isn't out yet. I would probably go with the RAID Z2 rather than HotSpare, or even Z3, depending on the critical nature of the data. And the reason why is just keeping all the drives online. I mean, it'll notify you if a drive goes bad, and drives are readily available. Why not have them all part of the pool? Drives also last quite a long time. I haven't had time to really dive into it, but when you dive into like the Backblaze reviews, they'll show you, I mean, there are occasional drive runs that may not work as well. But overall, when you talk about how small of a percentage those failure numbers are, they're not so high that it's as big of a problem. So why not leave them all running? But if you have something mission critical and you want a hot spare, I mean, if the budget's there, cool. I like having them all hot and running if possible. It comes down to risk mitigation and things like that. Is pfSense good to resell internet to tenants? So pfSense can be trouble. It's just not easy to configure in a non-NAT mode, but it can be done. You can turn off NAT and hand out public IPs. It is something that can be done in pfSense. It's trickier. There might be better ways to do it. But I guess if you have a block of IPs and you take the time to configure it, you could. Setting up the traffic shaping can be a little bit, because you want to filter all the traffic, or not filter it, but shape all the traffic to limit bandwidth on a per customer basis. You could use limiters and just limit it. So hopefully that helps there. IoT devices on a different SSID want to cast my main SID. Don't do that. Why? I do not understand people who don't consider this an IoT device. This is on the same, there's normally a Chromecast. There's a Chromecast right now, it's just displaying something else. The Chromecast is an IoT device. This is an IoT device. They go on the same network. There, problem solved. I don't know why people think they don't. If you want a headache and you want to try and make those devices work, I know MDNS might do it, and sometimes it doesn't because there's problems. It's one of those things that people spend a lot of time racking their brains over, and I'm like, your phone's an IoT device. And they're like, what? No, my phone can't be taken anywhere. I don't take this outside of the building, so I can't let it just connect to random networks, even if they're in my own house. Phones are kind of designed to be in hostile environments because by their own nature, they wander from one hostile environment to the next hostile environment. I mean, unless you're powering off the phone and making sure there's no connectivity every time you leave. Doubt that you're doing that, but hey, maybe I'm thinking wrong. Someone will argue with me on that point and give me a long answer as to why they think phones shouldn't be on there. Yeah. Let's see. You call your number, it won't ring. Outbound calls only. You don't. Here's the thing. This comes up all the time, and the way you should be configuring, in my opinion, and I say my opinion because this is what works for me, is you set it up proper SIP NAT, and my free PBX has no ports open. This is how we configure our free PBX. There are no ports open. There are no special rules in my firewall. Well, I take that back. We do a traffic shaping rule, and that's it. But even without the traffic shaping rule, it works fine because we're using VoIP MS. They support proper NAT. But then someone's going to say, but I'm not using VoIP MS. I found this other one. And I'm like, that's fine. This is one of the reasons we settled on VoIP MS is because we quit having problems by using VoIP MS. I've watched it. Matter of fact, Chris from Crosstalk has talked about this. I don't remember the name of every IP phone, but I've seen him comment that some of the IP services are just more buggy with firewalls than others. But if they implement the protocol properly, it's not buggy. So free PBX with proper SIP NAT setup, VoIP MS works great. I have no problems with it. I do know we get calls for people who want us to spend time troubleshooting. There's one of them, I can't remember the name of it now, that it just is real flaky about how it works. I don't know. That's one of the reasons we chose the one we chose. Watch Furman's video. There's not any... pfSense has got an okay traffic shaper. I'll just leave it at that. I don't have any strong videos on it because the pfSense traffic shaper's a little bit... I think you can do like an alias IP for ones. You have to like create an alias for everything. There's like really not simple ways to do it. That's something that could probably use some love over at pfSense to really rebuild the traffic shaping. There's not an easy way to do it. Your phone has things you don't want on a network. Yep, that's a possibility too. Phones on the guest network. Yeah. Yep, it's the whole problem with the we do XCP-ng at client sites. But like Kyle said, just so many people, that's like a constant one that people get is trying to make Sonos work. Sonos especially, I don't know why Sonos don't work. There's plenty of forums, and some people said it works, some people said it doesn't. It seems like it depends on what version of Sonos you're running, if it's a certain model. I just don't know it. I don't own any Sonos devices to actually sit and test it. And I don't find it to be the most, I don't know. My answer is usually put the phone on the same network as the Sonos and it works. Can you run Wireshark on Tails? I think I have run Wireshark on Tails when I did the last Tails video. pfSense and larger networks with dynamic DNS entries seem to restart unbound every few minutes. Nope, I've not seen that issue, but I also pretty much never use dynamic DNS. I mean, I know it exists, but it's not something I can think of any customers using it right now. Yeah, pfSense does have CoddleQ. Someone mentioned OpenSense does. Yeah, CoddleQ just in general, so there's proper traffic shaping with CoddleQ. That I recommend. That's usually enough. I will admit that there's been occasionally whenever I upgrade PF Blocker, it does seem to crash unbound that you have to restart. When there's an upgrade, not an update, not like when it updates its files, but when there's been an upgrade, I've noticed that happens occasionally. I don't use Pi-hole. There's plenty of videos on it. Craft Computing. I forgot to put my Craft Computing shirt on. I had it on earlier, so I took a selfie. Check out my friend Craft Computing. He's got videos on it. Yeah, CoddleQ works well. That's what we're using. We don't really have a problem with it. So, yes, on most firewalls, there's no forwarded ports open on the outside. That's, yes. Huh. Why did my computer take over? Oh, maybe I left it open. I just realized my computer's connected remotely to the studio computer. That's what that noise was. Frequently, attacks do happen from within. Matter of fact, outside of the garbage world of SonicWall and their disaster, you're right, the attacks, generally speaking, happen from within. Because that's SonicWall. That debacle that is the SonicWall CVEs that have been going around lately. I think I have. Let me pull it up real quick. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I have it. I have a link. I'm going to pull 1 second here. Here. My favorite security headline around it was SonicWall chokes on their own dog food. If you're not familiar with the term, it's because dog fooding is using your own product. But SonicWall was hacked using 0 days in its own product. And to read this, that's because, too long didn't read, they use a really old version of Bash, ancient version of Bash. This is where the problem is with SonicWall, when companies are using really, really old and like, oh, Bash? I mean, come on. There's no exploits for that in the last 10 years. Why would we bother updating it? Well, clearly there are some problems, and that's part of what led to the SonicWall incident that was on there. Is they were running really, my understanding, some pretty old versions of stuff, and that kind of led to the problems they had. So yeah, there are times firewalls are hacked externally because generally, you know, there's external access to like VPNs, for example. And when you have something that has a publicly exposed with really old things attached to it, you are going to figure out that there's probably ways to hack it. So, and that's how SonicWall got, yeah. Yeah, about 7 years old. They were able to use a 7-year-old exploit on a modern firewall. So, for those of you that like SonicWall, that's something to think about. And before you say FortiNet, oh my gosh, this is one of my FortiGate magic packet. Is it called Magic Packet VPN exploit? I'm trying to find it because they their own write-up was wild on this. It's how they got the remote login on this. I'm trying to remember because I did a video on it. Oh, right here. This is great. This is all right. Here's the thing. Security is hard. So I'm going to preface this. Security is very difficult. Getting security right, very challenging. So I'm not judging companies by the fact that they had a security incident. There's always going to be someone, if they're really clever, being able to find ways that are in. What I do blame companies for is SonicWall's incident. SonicWall, you're using a 7-year-old bug in your modern system here in 2021. That is not a, oops, we coded something incorrectly that was really difficult to code. That's just poor housekeeping. This is what happened over at FortiGate, the publicly traded firewall company. In addition, it was also disclosed and fixed in May of 2019 that FortiOS included a magic string value that had been previously created at the request of a customer to enable users to implement password chain process when password chain was expiring. That function had been inadvertently bundled into the general FortiOS release. An improper authorization vulnerability resulted in being able to usable to its own remotely changed password on an SLVPN web portal user without credentials. Isn't that great? So someone calls it FortiGate and goes, guys, we got this terrible idea we want to implement. We want you to go ahead and put in a password change for us in the VPN. All right, you're a big customer and we like you, so we're going to implement it. Somehow that got pushed into production code. So a customer request to change passwords over VPN on the FortiGate system ended up in the code base of FortiGate. That's not a normal bug. That's not that, and someone discovered it because, you know, security through obscurity doesn't work for anyone playing the home game here. And now we have FortiGate going, oh yeah, magic packet, that. And then you can dig up, I did a video on this before talking about it, but it's just like, those are the kind of security things. They aren't like really delve in deep, found a flaw because there was something that was really, you know, took a series of stacking of different attacks and was complicated. It was like, yeah, they just embedded garbage and things like that. So yeah. So SonicWall opened up administration via SSH. No, they attacked them through the VPN. They attacked through the VPN. They were able to exploit this. If I'm not mistaken, the whole thing was accessible. Yeah, right here. Virtual Office SSL with a ancient version of Bash, shell shock. Therefore, the exploit was trivial. We simply spaff edge payload to Bash dev TCP back connect, and we get shell. As far as I know, this was all exploited via the VPN itself, because that's what SonicWall said. The answer was turn off the VPN, because that's SonicWall's workaround was, until we get this patched, just don't use our VPN. So that was SonicWall's like official statement right here. Wasn't close SSH. They said urgently, and this has been updated now. It took a little while to update. This batch processes upgrade. Customers unable to upgrade immediately deploy the built-in web application firewall. Features mitigation, blah, blah. Please follow the guidance here. But basically, it's turn off the VPN, I think was what this one says here. That's like the workaround until we get it patched. So it was not something like you left SSH open. Web application subscription, SMA. Yeah, I'm not a SonicWall user, but it's not hard to find any of this and read through the details of it. But like I said, I'm calling them out on what those problems were. A customer requested backdoor that somehow got put in there. Yeah, I know, that's fun. We run the latest firmware on UniFi. We usually don't let UniFi handle the guest networks. We use pfSense and we let pfSense handle the guest network. So to us, it's just another SSID. We don't use the USG products. They are a headache. Any of the routing equipment that UniFi makes is a headache. We just avoid it. It was only SonicWall SMA, not the firewalls. Okay. Yeah, the light was... Well, I don't know if the light's flashing because the camera's disabled right there. Yeah, security higher finding public closed vulnerability is harder. Yes. Yeah, I'm not using... We don't usually use the guest function. We're usually just setting up an SSID and pointing it and using it as a guest VLAN. Your answer is probably best posted. Your question about TrueNAS is probably better posted in the forums because I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Oh, the Synology NAS. Now, I don't know if I need a dedicated video on this or not. I wanted to bring that up. And Willie did a video. Serve the Home did a video. Does Tom need to do a video too? Probably. I think that we all have to kind of cover the gamut of this topic of Synology locked drives. Oh no, it's the end of Synology. I'm throwing my Synology right out the window. They're going to lock the drives on me. I think people misunderstood that. I think it was maybe Synology is relying on people like Serve the Home and Willie and me and to talk about that. And we're not trying to defend it. We're trying to explain it. I get why they're doing some of it. And they're doing it in a very narrow models. It's not like their consumer ones are doing this. This is actually something you may not know. If you bought a TrueNAS from me, like you bought the Enterprise $100,000, really high-end, like one of the ones I've reviewed here on the channel, the big boy with the dual controllers and everything, you know what you don't get to do? Pick your hard drives. Now, they vary regiment. You get the warranty, you get the hard drives, you get everything. This is common for storage vendors. You don't get to just go, hey, just give me a chassis, I'm going to stick whatever I want in there. They're like, oh, that is not going to come up with any type of SLA agreement. And I kind of get why. And what happens is when you try to target some of the higher end markets, the customer, the vendor, I should say, the vendor such as Synology doesn't want the customer picking and choosing drives because customers sometimes will do things like, well, choose whatever they want. And that may not be the best fit for the best performance because first they will go off script from what Synology recommends, and then they will come back at Synology and complain about some performance problem they're having. Now, Synology is working on, as I understand at least, certifying more than the Toshiba drives, which you really do have to have more than one line of drives because that could create a real problem. You have a bottleneck in your business if you do rely on this. So I really feel Synology is working towards that. It's also a narrow list of devices that are doing it. They're trying to get into that mid-level, lower-level enterprise market to be able to provide the agreements that some of these small businesses want. give you reliable performance, be able to deal with firmware issues as they may arise, and be able to push it. This is one of the features that comes with it. Any of these companies that do the certification also get to have the firmware updates pushed through the Synology. So I get it, why they want to do it. I mean, it's probably not a product targeted towards the people that are complaining about it. It's kind of how I feel. I haven't dove deep into it. I read through it. I did watch the video that was done by Patrick at Serve the Home. I think he's really accurate on it. I don't know that I have any more value to add other than I agree with what Patrick said. He said the same things that I just reiterated, and he's someone I've talked to before. He's very, very knowledgeable on storage and understands why the vendor did this. It's not something that I see any future Synology doing for like the box you see behind me. That market, why would they do it? That's not a market that they're offering you SLA type agreements where they're going, this is guaranteed to work at this many IOPS, this level of performance, and here's your warranty that comes with it. So that's why, you know, this is one of the reasons why I don't really see them changing that. And their announcement didn't say that. Their announcement was very specific to certain models that supported. So hopefully that clears that up. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. That's why I threw Synology in here, because a lot of people keep asking if I'm going to do a video on it. And I'm like, I agree with the videos that are done on it. So hopefully that clears that up a little bit. Let's see. How noisy is a Dell R630? I don't think I'd want it in my living room, but I'm not you. I don't like any noise in my living room. But if you don't have anywhere else to put it, then and maybe you like the noise the server makes. I guess I don't mind the noise too much unless I'm watching a movie, but I watch movies in my living room. Some people also have locked their Synology. You know, and from my friends here that are also business owners that provide services, do you let, in general, if you let the customer pick certain aspects of a stack you're building, you know it would be more problematic to support. This is one of the reasons sometimes we choose the customers, because if we laid it out, the customer would just go, what's the cheapest one I can stick in there and it works? And you're like, but that won't give you the performance, and you'll complain. This is why sometimes you package things, because you understand better. Like I said, it's not like I'm trying to defend Synology. I kind of get why they did it. I get the niche of market they're going after for that type of thing. And I don't at all see Synology doing this. I can't imagine any way Synology would try to do this with their current line that is more, you know, consumer facing. Because I still think Synology has a pretty solid product. Yeah. Serve the Home made some great points. I see people agreeing. Awesome. Like I said, Serve the Home's Patrick's wicked smart on this stuff. He's really knowledgeable on this. I don't watch all of his videos, but I really don't think I've watched a video that Patrick did that I go, oh no, that guy's wrong. I'm telling you, Patrick, he knows his stuff, and I've talked directly to him, conversations with him, etc. He's a good guy. Oh yeah, apparently you've never tried to put memory in a Dell Enterprise server. Oh, the fun and joy of that. I like this. I think some of the older Dells used to have, and you can find this on Dell's website, the only certain arrangements of memory that they support. And it sometimes will puzzle you going, wait, what? I can't use these? No, you can't use those slots. You have to put them in this pattern or this pattern, depending on what size they are, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a bunch of things that are troublesome like that. So yeah, there's I don't know. It's definitely an enterprise thing. Spec'd out a ZFS white box with roughly 50 terabytes of storage. Nice. Nope, I have not done much with the TP-Link. I don't really look at a TP-Link as anything more than I'm always looking around because I have that one switch. TP-Link is so basic. Like, I don't look at them as a high quality, great vendor that I would really want to use. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they have something better out there, but yeah. pfSense Firewall is based on PF, the PF filter for BSD. It's not Linux based. Technically, pfSense is based on monowall. Yeah, there's another point Nikolai made here, is this is something even from my own side. If I'm speccing out a server for someone that costs quite a bit of money, especially a high-end storage server that's going to be in use for the next 5 years in a mission-critical environment, I don't really want to guess my way through hard drives. Hearing from a vendor, from my own standpoint, being the middleman who's providing a solution, so to speak, because I don't make the hardware, being able to call them up and go, look, guys, this is going to go in a medical facility. It is got to be bulletproof, man. I cannot have any problems. I need no stupid problems with drives. You want a company to go, I want to give you a quote. It ain't going to be the cheapest quote, but it'll be a quote that you can confidently hand over to the client, and it'll come with a guarantee that there will be no problems. This is an advantage you have when you buy something, from a vendor that sticks the drives in. Like I said, it's not the most budget friendly, because of course there's going to be markup, but you're paying them for the time to do some of that research. So I mean, I get it, and it's kind of a nice offering from Synology. Synology's ramping it up and wanting to do more in that market. I have the new Synology AMD rack station plugged in the other room right now. I think we'll log into it before the thing's over. I see where Synology's really trying to level up a little bit and get into the market. They make a good product, and I really, all the Synologies we've deployed have been really hassle-free, and they solve some really good niches, especially like the surveillance station for cameras. We just did a deployment for another customer where they, wanted to replace all the backup systems with Synology. Works. It's just one of those easy to manage. They have multiple buildings. Now they're crossing backups between the buildings. They're geographically somewhat separate. They have fiber lines in between them. It's just, putting in a Synology at each one of their buildings and backups that go from one building to the next building and back up all the workstations and back up all the email and everything else has worked out really well for them. Yes, if you're an auto mechanic, there's always that extra price for when they help. And if anyone's worked in the auto mechanic field, don't you love it when someone brings you the part and they're like, I'm going to save money by bringing you the parts to put in the car for me because that'll help, right? No, you chose that. No, that model doesn't work as well. As you, the mechanic, you know that. And as them, the consumer, it doesn't always save money. What else do we have in here? Synology locking drives, I'm not going to say is exactly the same as Cisco locking SFP. There are, of course, similarities. You're not wrong, but a little bit different. I'll admit, we had a client who had a bad SFP, which was causing problems. And, there is that argument of don't use cheap SFPs. They used something else, some cheap one they had, and turned out they thought the port was bad, ordered another SFP module, and it fixed the problem on a fiber line. That they were really worried that the fiber line, because it was buried in across the parking lot, would be the problem. But, I mean, I don't know. There's some argument both ways to sourcing everything like that, but I don't know. It's kind of going back and forth, and I'm not trying to be too wishy-washy on it. I get it while they wanted to provide it, but it's a narrow version and narrow list of models. They will probably offer something, I would guess, but these are also $5,000 models. I don't think there is much targeted for people who choose the drives as much. I think that was the base price on these was like $4,000 or $5,000. I don't remember exactly the model numbers, but it's only a narrow group of models. They're targeted starting at before you buy the drives. I think it's going to be, like if you bought the drives with it, probably like a $7,000, $8,000 purchase. They're not targeting at the low-end market, so it's it's a little bit niche, but yeah. All right. Let's see. How do you monitor an XCP-ng host server? You can use SNMP. I guess it's what kind of monitoring are you trying to do? Zen Orchestra will monitor it for you as well. Old Supermicro had those layouts with the drawn instruction. Yeah, they do too. I've seen some of those like that. Synology being a Taiwanese company and the impact of geopolitics. I don't know. I cannot speak to that. It is difficult because I don't know. There's a lot of factors I don't have answers to on that. So do lots of reading. I don't know how much you can trust those companies in there. I don't have a good factor for that. By the way, Synology is essentially built on a proprietary platform. So very proprietary that requires activation for things. There is the other side of Synology of you do have a device, even though it's all based on local storage. For example, when you turn on active backup, it does require you to register and activate it because it's not an open source at all. It's very loosely based on open source because it does have a basic Linux core, but that's it. I believe I think it's BusyBox at the base of it. But everything else after that's proprietary. It's like outside of having a Linux boot kernel and using the Linux RAID tools, everything else on a Synology is proprietary. Hard drive cloning is slow. I don't know. I use Clonezilla. There's a lot of cloning software. I'm not an expert on it. Look into the Grandstream. The problem I have with the Grandstream is you tie to their cloud. I know one day they are allegedly going to possibly have a controller that is hostable. I don't like companies, and I brought this up in my video of UniFi comparables. I brought up OpenMesh. OpenMesh was cool. Everyone told me I should do OpenMesh, and I had friends that got into it, and then I had friends that got burned by it. I went with the UniFi one because I had a local controller, and that was back in 2014. OpenMesh got bought by Datto, and the cloud went away unless you paid for it. Simple enough. And it was like pay for our cloud or become a brick. That is just kind of a challenge with some of those companies. If they raise prices, even if it starts out as free, if they raise prices or just discontinue cloud support and there's not a local way to manage them, you have a brick. It's just really aggravating. There's a lot of companies like this. They tie everything to the cloud so they can tie you to them. It becomes, a weird mating ritual. You become glued to them, whether you like it or not. And without any local management, yeah. Now, someone pointed out a confusing fact that I'm scratching my head even thinking about is Aruba. I had a hard time because I did the Aruba review. I got to reach back out to the Aruba people because I called my friend who's an Aruba reseller, and he goes, "We have a local controller. We always use our cloud." He didn't know, and he sells the product. He's a reseller. He's not working for Aruba. He sells it with his stack, and he likes it, but he just uses their cloud. He's like, whatever, we pay. They're using paid versions and buy licenses. And he didn't know they had a local controller version. So I'm like, matter of fact, it's not easily found on Aruba's site. I'm like, I did a review of the Aruba Instant On, but apparently there are certain models, not all, but certain models that are access points that do have local management. So what I've learned is all those companies do not have websites that make it easy, but by making a video, because the best way to find the right answer is to post the wrong answer on the internet. So by saying, I don't think one exists, people set out to prove me wrong. What they did prove, though, was there are companies that do it, but a lot of those companies don't have websites that are easy to follow to figure out what product line supports what. Let's see. Grandstream has a local controller. I've heard from Willie that they're working on it, is what I believe. So... and their router can be a controller. Okay. Once again, a little fuzzy on it. So I'll have to see how they hold up. I don't know. I know Willie's been testing them. I'll ask him. I have not dove into the Grandstream and really read a lot about them. I just, well, let's look real quick. So Grandstream Wi-Fi. See if their website actually tells us anything. Here's some models. Tremendous Wi-Fi coverage. Range, fast, easy provisioning management. Think to a built-in controller. But does it manage all of them? Does it a group controller? APs can also be paired to third-party routers. Well, that's good. Making that ideal for existing Wi-Fi deployment. So that's fine. Soft phone extensions, device management. Contact sales. Is it a software controller? Is it built into the hardware? And this is sometimes the problem you have is, maybe it's I'm not reading deep enough here, so I'm skimming as I'm doing a live stream. You know, does it have supports devices, advanced QoS, web configuration, FAQ? And this is, you know, maybe they need something to clarify that how the controller works on it. So if Wi-Fi controller, Wi-Fi management, let's look here. Okay. New GW manager, how does it work? Download. Runs in Linux. I don't need to download it right now. I don't have any Grandstream. So, okay, they do have it. It says new. So, cool. They do have a controller. I don't know how good it worked, but they have one. So, neat. If MikroTik documented CapSpan, it would be a solution. Yeah, the MikroTik's documentation is mediocre at best. And also quirky. So that's, yeah. My history with the Grandstream voice products is the older ones, at least, were always the cheap stuff. And I just would see them in the cheapest deployments and things like that. I never really used them much, but it was, yeah. The Grandstream AP can be a master for up to 30 or 50 APs. Okay. Let's see. Hey, thank you. Oh. Debian. Drop some likes. Yes, there are 55 likes and 327 people on this live stream, so more likes is much appreciated. We'll definitely go with that. Let's see, what do we have here? What else is in my list of things? Canary tokens. Oh, someone's always just clicking a dislike button. I'm used to that. That's fine. 91 likes. All right, that happened quick. Awesome. So let's go to my Twitter real quick because I tweeted something. So we'll talk about what I tweeted and where'd it go. So this is, if you don't know who Harun Mir is, cybersecurity person, owner, CEO of Think's Canary. He talked about the importance and why Canary tokens are important. I thought I'd bring it up to see. He reached out to me. We actually were talking this morning, me and Harun, where I may have him. I may do some interviews or some with. I want to see, maybe I'll create some content with him. Anyways, but he's famous for Canary tokens, but he also has this. This is canarytokens.org. I can move my head so they're not in the way. But what these do is allow you to generate Canary tokens for free. And it's kind of neat. This is pretty cool. You can set a DNS, a web URL, unique email address, custom image bug. You can put these around in different places on your network and be able to determine, like hiding a Slack API key, you can determine whether or not someone has tripped that token. And if you're not familiar with the whole term canary token or what a canary token is, essentially the term comes from the history of canary in a coal mine. Canaries are more sensitive to certain, gases and things like that. So they would literally take a canary in a coal mine, and if the canary stopped singing, it was time to get out of the mine. They were an early warning system. And that seems cruel, and yes, it is. But yeah, it saved the lives of miners back in early days of mining. The concept is the same with canary tokens, where you don't know who's on your network. But if you set a token to look like something that you know that no one should touch, And if someone touches that, it gives you a notice, such as generate a SQL Server database or accessed. Just a general QR code if someone scans that QR code and tries to follow something in it. There's just a lot of neat things that are in here, and you can generate these for free. And this is just kind of a fun thing that you can have, and if someone clicks on it, I get their IP address of who clicked on it. And then you can start investigating, going, wait a minute, no one should have clicked on that inside my network. I thought I had that hidden. Someone's poking around the network. And Canary tokens, they also, Haroon started a company called Canary, and they sell a physical device as well. And I've never used them, but the concept is really cool. They emulate vulnerable devices on your network. And the reason he's referencing the SolarWinds hack in that tweet is because what if SolarWinds would have had some tokens on there? And, you know, obviously the hackers, if they get in, they have to look around. This is where the Canary token looks exactly the same. You set up a stack of servers, Active Directory Server 1, Active Directory Server 2, Active Directory Server 3. And then you make it fun by putting one of those three isn't the real Active Directory server, or whatever you have set up, some type of share system or some type of routing equipment. The token, the hardware version emulates something. The software one that's free that you can play with that I posted on there is, yeah, it's something you can just put on there. If something trips that, let's say you have all your API keys somewhere and all of a sudden someone just tried to use it outside the organization and it was your fake one that you set up as a token, that's that early warning and detection. It's actually really cool. I really love it in concept to play around with it. I may do some videos playing around with it because I want to try this. So we're going to just pull up something else. Open Canary. Because there is also, let me find, hold on. Find the website for this. I didn't have it bookmarked before the show. Damn it. I'm looking for, I think there's a GitHub project for it. There we go. So I can find both. Because you can buy a hardware device and it's part of a full commercial support that you can get for their Canary product, or you can play around. This is an actively updated project called the OpenCanary, the GitHub for it. It lets you build these Canary systems and then lets you emulate different servers. And if you go over here, let me close that. And we go over here, here's the documentation of how to configure it as a Linux server. Hey, funny thing, one of the configurations right here. Emulate a Synology NAS, and then you build this OpenCanary. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this supports something simple, like even like a Raspberry Pi, and they do have a Docker image for it as well, but I believe this is supported on Raspberry Pis. It's a really cool project, and it's neat to be able to think about this because this is one of those extra countermeasures to stop people. Because if you are really worried about getting on your network, you want to really know, are they on your network? And setting up these canaries are fine. So that's why I brought it up and threw it in the header of the live stream. I'm going to talk to Haroon and, go through and talk about, maybe we'll do a video together or something and play with some of the devices and set things up. And maybe if he's got time, he's Xavier, put him on the network, but not tell him about the canaries, and see if he can detect them, see if he can figure out what's essentially, canaries are very similar to a honeypot. So can you keep your fingers out of the sticky honeypot that would alert me that you're here while you're trying to do that lateral movement? And back to the SolarWinds, for example, now you're talking about the not having any canaries. They may have had an early warning because if they would have tripped something on their way to their destination, which was the build server, they would have been able to have been found. So it's an expensive countermeasure, by the way. My understanding is their product is not cheap at all, but it's yes, Huntress uses ransomware canaries as well. We do use Huntress and we do use their ransomware canaries. I just love when it tells us the canaries are armed. That makes me laugh every time. I wish, maybe I could talk one of them to put in here. I want a little canary with flexing arms, like next to it when it says canaries are armed. Yeah, Canary is very similar to honeypot. Yep, I've seen someone posted that. I'm reading back through the comments. Unleash the canaries. Didn't the SolarWinds stuff? So the SolarWinds is really... there is a armed bird subreddit, by the way, for anyone that needs a fix of birds with arms. Yeah, there's a lot more birds with arms than there should be. I don't know what the proper amount of birds with arms is, but there's a lot of birds with arms. There's a lot of photos of that. The SolarWinds stuff. So the SolarWinds had anti-sandboxing and anti-detection in the deployment. Not once they got to the build server in SolarWinds, the tools they built and built into the SolarWinds Orion tool, wow, really solid work, because whoever these threat actors are, they did a lot of anti-detection. For example, every time it would build the new version of Orion, for 14 days, it would not be detected. It would not activate. Also, it did a bunch of domain detection to determine where it was at. So if it was inside of SolarWinds, for example, when they're doing QA testing, it would not activate. They did so many different levels of evasion that it was really wild to see that it got how hard it was to find. Matter of fact, there's a big part of me pretty much believes if they wouldn't have went after FireEye, I think they got too bold. They got in so many places and they just decided, you know what we can do? We're going to get those FireEye people. We can get in there. And that's what tripped them up. I don't know, and I don't know that we'll know how FireEye discovered it. Maybe FireEye has a canary, and maybe they hit something inside the firewall or FireEye network that tripped them up. Because that was how we discovered it. Matter of fact, if it wasn't for that breach announced in early December by FireEye, that was like the chain of events that brought us to today on everything we know. The scariest thing is, if they didn't go after FireEye, we would still be sitting here not knowing. That's wild when you think about it. Like, we know so much all because of FireEye getting breached. And when you breach a very large cybersecurity company that focuses on incident response, that is huge. They're probably one of the bigger companies out there doing that specific task. You went after the big guys and they came after you hard. So I find it really interesting. It's kind of going to be kind of a long story. And because these are where this is not really security through obscurity, it's obscurity for what they do. Because if FireEye were to disclose publicly, oh yeah, we had a canary on there and we were emulating this, well, then they would know. They would give them too much of an edge. So I don't think there may be certain aspects of this that just kind of get buried and left out, like how FireEye discovered it was on their network. And there's also sometimes because the OPSEC was so good of the threat actors that went after SolarWinds, we may not know how they got in. It may be a mystery because everything we've watched with who they got into, their ability to scrub all of the logs really well, even on systems that have a lot of, logging facilities, they were writing firewall rules to keep their discovery quiet. Like, they were adding firewall rules in some of the people they targeted to quiet down how they were doing lateral movement. They were doing so many different evasion techniques. It's going to be hard to figure out how they got into some of these places. So that's just really wild when you dig into it. I've been reading and making a lot of notes because I'm working on it's going to be long, but there's just that much detail, timeline, and it's going to be a composition from FireEye, CrowdStrike, and Microsoft, and anywhere else that I've got all this data put together in one place, so I can create like a timeline of this is step by step what happened from the discovery to the deployment. And by the way, this was even weirder. This came out from the Microsoft report. So there was an assumption that when they infected it in October of 2019, that it was still infected in December of 2020. But that's actually not true. They infected but did not deploy. They modified the code but left the code inert. The code was not finalized until March. So October was most of the code change. It went unnoticed. So that was like did they notice that movement? No, cool. Then in March, they went ahead and activated. But then if I'm not mistaken, by June or July, they stopped the activation and took it back out. This is really unusual because they only had a narrow version where they were pushing it out. They seemed to get enough targets, or maybe the targets they were after, and they stopped. And that's pretty wild of how detailed that is. So the more you dive into it, the more you got like a disciplined actor. They were following like procedures and being very careful and quiet of how they did things to evade detection. So yeah, really interesting for sure. I have not used the Tesla USB to auto upload any of the footage. You're so quick to bury yourself in the paranoia thoughts. What if something compromised? Yeah, you could quickly bury yourself in it. Yes, I choose not to. I just live life because I mean, if I really, you could wrap a tinfoil hat and go, I'm just gonna be a farmer. I'm just gonna not touch technology for a little while because you can definitely end up down that path. I don't, but yeah. The nice thing is, I see the hookup is in here. The nice thing is about the teaching cybersecurity, you probably listen to Darknet Diaries, which does have a lot of write-ups. One of the things that I really like that Jack Resider does with Darknet Diaries is he runs through a lot of the court papers to find a lot of information. Because that's actually when you find the most out is years after a case is over, because so much of this ends up as court transcripts. And that's really helpful if you are trying to research. And it's not like the cases are too old. And me and Xavier brought this up. We finally got around to doing another how they got hacked. I don't have a time frame for the next one we're going to do. But when we did it, one of the things we laughed about was a case finally got conviction from 2 years earlier when it happened. They finally got closure on a case for some plea deals. I don't remember which case it was. I think it was the Citrix one. It was the payouts for the Citrix, actually, specifically. It was some settlements for Citrix having a data breach in 2019, and it got settled in February of 2021. It takes a long time just to get this, and I'm not even sure all that data is available yet, because it's probably sealed for exactly what happened at Citrix. And Citrix is so long ago, people are going, Citrix had a data breach? Yeah, there's been so many data breaches since the 2019 Citrix data breach, we forgot about this 2019 Citrix data breach. Security Onion videos. Yes, that is high on my to-do list, and but buried somewhere in the minutia of all the things I'm working on at the moment. I have Security Onion running at home, and maybe I'll log into it in a second. Pop! OS is running on an L480. That's what's in front of you right now, is this one. And I have Pop! OS running on a, I don't remember what model this is. X250. So here's an X250 running Pop! OS as well. I've been switching things around. This is my daily driver at home, but I'm kind of sick of bringing it in, and we're not really using this one as our on-site laptop as much anymore. So this is now the new studio laptop that I don't care if they borrow to be an on-site laptop. So that's Pop! OS, for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of different devices it works on. Works nice on his 250. His 250 is a little bit older and slower, but it's still a solid laptop. I do like it. Gets the job done. Bonus, though, for doing videos, because the laptop's always on this side, the network cable is on this side. The 250 had it on this side, so I like that better. So that's my other, I'll just bringing it back. All I do when I'm doing things for videos is reading off some of the screen, so that laptop will do fine for that. Pop! OS in this laptop. It works on a lot of them. So let's see, scroll down here. Some people know which one I'm using, yes. Don't go Linus. I didn't think, I don't, oh, don't drop it. Don't go Linus. I think you're going, don't drop it, Tom. Don't drop it. All I need is socks, sandals, and start dropping things, right? Oh, yeah. Is this a Stream Deck Mini? Yes. And what happens is we push the button, and then we switch to this. There's a few other buttons programmed down here, and we switch back. So that's, yes, Stream Deck Mini. I love it. I mean, the bigger one's cool too, but I don't really have that many buttons. I have one for this view and one for this view. I have one for, yeah. I can make myself go away. I have overhead and I have start and stop on it for starting and stopping recording. So yeah, I love the Stream Deck. I think it's great. Yeah, Linus has, I mean, oh yeah, that was mute. I don't have audio set up on that one. I have one that doesn't have any audio on it. So mute, yes. I might do a YubiKey video. I haven't decided. I like the YubiKey. It's definitely cool. Maybe it's on my to-do list as well. I gotta catch up because right now I have to catch up on some storage videos. That's my next thing is before I can go back to some of the other ones. YubiKey or Titan, I don't know, whichever one makes you happy. I believe they're based on the same physical hardware. I don't know that for certain. I think someone mentioned it. I don't know for absolute certainty whether or not they're built exactly on the same hardware. Hello in Germany. Would you recommend pfSense Plus for most of your clients when it switches over? Yes. For the business clients, we're undoubtedly going to pfSense Plus. I don't really see a reason not to. Most all of them, I think all of them are on, what do you call it, Netgate devices. Do you know anything about where UniFi is getting their traffic signatures for IPS or how often they're updated? This is actually a fun topic, so let's go here real quick. UniFi IDS. It's funny that you bring that up, that question. Ubiquity. Go right on the board 100 times. I must validate input data before using it. Update silently breaks IDS IPS. Ubiquity got a lesson in never blindly trusting external input this month. The intrusion detection prevention system featured in its gateway hardware fetched a set of rules from an outside source. This was actually in July 2020. It fell back to known valid data. It simply stopped working. Thus, users were none the wiser. Network security mechanism had failed and was no longer doing its job alerting folks from malicious activity. It's built on Errata. They said it's said to be. It is built on Errata. I know that. It's just, I don't like the way UniFi did it. They are trying to make it simple. The problem is it's not a simple process. So I don't know. So it went for a while being unnoticed. I don't have a lot of answers about it or any thoughts on it. I don't use any of their routing hardware, so that's why I don't have, that's my problem with it. Oh, I think this is funny. They would deny the bug bounty program because they said it's a beta service. So there's that as an answer for the person that found out that they weren't doing their job. So that's my thoughts on it. I wouldn't use any of their, yeah, they're using the ET like most vendors, which is the part of the ET Pro security from, the ET open threats. If you're not, that's part of the Errata that goes in for the Errata feed. I don't even know if I'm going to get the UXG Pro. I don't know. Yeah, I am just so not thrilled with all the UniFi routing equipment. It just doesn't, yeah, I got nothing. It just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't do it for me. It's buggy, it's basic. I think for home users it's fine as long as they don't have any advanced needs. That's kind of my answer. You can still get the, I believe, ET Open. Let me find it real quick. Yeah, they're still, you can still get these. So they're still downloadable. They're still for the different Errata. So the emerging threats are still there. They still appear to be up to date. Yeah, these are all current. That's old one. Current ones are going to be. Is there a way just to sort? I'll have to go down the bottom of this. There we go. These are the old rules. Firewall rules. AT open. Yeah, this is all modern stuff here. So there's merging threats, emerging threat MD5, merging all rules. Yeah, there's still it's still out there. I didn't think, to my knowledge, they're not discontinuing it, but who knows? Yeah, lots of vendors are using it. The bigger challenge is the challenge comes down to with using any of those rules is as more and more traffic's encrypted. I mean, the rules help sort out the base level attacks. It's not like the base level attacks go away, but that's all they end up sorting out at some point is the base level attacks, because the more encrypted, better ones, the higher end threat actors, they know that if they want a high value target, they're going to trip those type of rules. So they usually go after something a little better. So yeah. How do you find time to run a business with so much production content? I hired smart people. That's how I do it. That's the trick. Have a good team. It's the same reason Elon spends time putting memes out there. He's hired so many smart people, he can goof off and post lots of memes. I haven't figured out how to do it at Elon's level, though. That's how you find time to do that, though. Hire a lot of smart people. I have no opinion on Sophos XG Firewall. Some people like it, some people hate it. I don't have any intention to use it, so I don't love or hate it. I don't have a use case for it. It doesn't look compelling to me. My take on intrusion detection systems I just gave. They're blind to many, many things because of the encryption. So it also depends on whether or not you have anything open to the outside world. That's a big factor. If all your ports are closed and you're not hosting a services that you have ports open for, that creates another blind spot, so to speak, because it's only going to inspect outgoing traffic at that point. There's less things outgoing on there, so yeah. Uncle Skeet, awesome. Thank you for the donation. He says, thanks so much for your PF Sense videos. Very helpful. Awesome. I do appreciate it. Yeah, someone else who says they have the UniFi as a doorstop. Yep. You get booted off. I don't know anything about getting booted off of when you're on a PS4. I got no help for you. Not something I can help with. Any recommendation of how to use the power of PF Sense with the added manageability of UDM Pro? No, don't use UDM Pro. Do you use agency tests or anything to find smart people? No, but I haven't run out of friends to hire yet. So that's the current thing. There are certainly places to do it. So anything worth mentioning in PF Sense WireGuard? No. How do you secure industrial equipment like PICs, torque control, etc.? Don't expose it to the internet. Kyle says, we haven't found any smart people. Yeah, it's a challenge. Oh, you're not the only one who regrets spending money on a UDM Pro. I jokingly say the reason there's a UDM Pro in the bottom of my rack here is so I can turn it on once in a while, update it, so I can be disappointed. Yeah, the further offline you can keep things, the better. Does it need to be online? Stop and ask that question. Putting it on absolutely separate lockdown networks and limiting access to absolutely only what's necessary. That's huge. That solves so many problems. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that do not solve problems that way. They just run around networking everything together because that's easier. Easy and security are often at odds with each other. I've pretty much only used Acme certs for HA proxy. I've only used Let's Encrypt with HA proxy. I've never used any other cert company. Let's Encrypt and HA proxy, they just work together really well, especially in pfSense. I've thought about doing more Let's Encrypt videos. It's kind of on my to-do list. Once again, my to-do list gets really long. I think Jay might have a few from Learn Linux TV. Maybe me and him should do one together. If you're comparing Meraki and UniFi, they're in very different categories. I mean, Meraki is a reliable, solid system. The licensing fees are just, well, licensing fees. UniFi doesn't have licensing fees, so they're very different. I have no idea if you can use pfBlock. I don't use OpenSense. Yeah, it's too bad the UDM Pro doesn't have x86 innards, so you can do something different with it. Yeah. Yes, you can put a pfSense in front of the UDM Pro. I mean, you can double NAT anything. It just becomes an added complexity to your network. I thought about doing a video like that to show you that, yes, you can. I don't know why you would. At some point, other than the sunken cost problem of I already have a UDM Pro, it doesn't do what I want, I guess I'll buy something and put it in front of it. Okay, that's the only way you can really do, so... Use a VPN if you need a VPN. That's my thoughts on VPNs. That's not really a question. Yeah, so Stuxnet's an example. Stuxnet's an example of if you have a threat actor with an absolutely immense amount of resources, at some point, you're going to have a problem. I mean, there's going to be issues. If that threat actor is determined enough to do something and well-funded enough to carry out their tasks, yeah. Because at some point, even if you do take things offline, you have the insider threat problem that you may not be able to mitigate. And, you know, Elon Musk himself, since we're bringing him up, someone offered him, I think it was $1 million. I'm trying to remember the article, but basically someone tried to pay off someone at Elon's team in order to get inside their network. I mean, that at some point, build the best network you got. Turns out that person was rather honest and chose not to do it and turn that person over to the FBI, and they arrested the person offering the payout to get inside the network. But yeah, these are, you know, this is the whole thing. My thoughts on FortiGate. Search my channel for FortiGate. You can have my thoughts on FortiGate then. We talked about it earlier in the live stream. FortiGate, magic packets, backdoors. I mean, FortiGate's cleaned up their act since that 2019 incident, but they've had a few other ones. They've hard-coded a handful of passwords and things like that. But I mean, I know a lot of people running a lot of FortiGate and they're happy with it. As long as they fix the problems they created, and the ones that they didn't create and were found, then use them if they make you happy. Matter of fact, sometimes there's certain things because of the agreements and the corporate SLA that may come with some high-end FortiGate with all the licensing fees that people go, hey, let's use it. Yeah, if you're already behind CGNAT, why not NAT some more? Go triple NAT. We have not done a bunch of BGP versus Cisco on there, so I'm not sure. Head over to the pfSense forums. Yeah, 1 million to give me the admin password. I think they just wanted to plug a USB in. They didn't actually want the admin password. Does double NAT stop OpenVPN working in OpenVPNs? It creates a lot of complexities. There's ways around it, but anytime you add more NAT, you have more problems. Did I get into GameStop before it was too late? I don't know, somewhere in between. My wife manages stocks, not me. Oh, good. Someone else said that their BGP and OSP, I think they meant OSPF, works perfectly between pfSense and Cisco. So that's good. You know, I will say this, to add to that, Netgate and their standards, overall, we find Netgate, we've connected Netgate like VPNs to all kinds of other devices. We actually find them to be really well compatible. Where we run into problems and we find out vendors have flaws. We were connecting to a FortiGate and I had a hell of a time making it work. The challenge I had with the FortiGate was, it turns out they were using a really old version of IPswan. And the only way to get an update was to buy a new contract on the FortiGate. At least my understanding from the other end of the people we're talking to, so they were reluctant to do it. But I also then pointed out there was some bugs or some reason there was the updates for it. So they were mad because they had to update to their FortiGate, which required buying a license. I don't like when vendors hide updates for security behind paywalls of subscription, but I don't know. Overall, it's I don't know. The standards followed in by pfSense has really built up a lot of confidence with me with the product. Like, I'm sure it'll connect to things, provided the other vendor followed the standard, because pfSense really does a good job of following the standards. Let's see. Migrating all FortiGate to Checkpoint. My friend used to do a lot of Checkpoint admin. He thought he liked the Checkpoint firewalls. He used them at a very, very large hospital with thousands and thousands of endpoints. So he liked it. But he manages very large scale network data systems. Yes, Juniper, I don't know if everything that Juniper does is built on OpenBSD, but I do know a lot of Juniper is, like, their firewalls are based on BSD. Nope, I haven't really looked into the UniFi 6 ones. I'll wait till the bug reports come out and everything else. Yes, pfSense is not just a cloud firewall. If you go over to AWS or Azure, you'll actually see that there's pfSense, AWS, and Azure options when they like have it pre-built in there. No, I don't usually use NTOP that much. We generally get Dell servers, and they're spec'd based on whatever the client needs are. I don't know that they're really mini servers or whatever fits the bill for the client. We have to look at the use case. What do they need? All right, and we frequently will grab a Dell server for things. If we can run it in the cloud and that's a better solution, that's the thing that people keep asking, like, is it all cloud or all this? It depends. We solve problems. We don't try to shove people into a solution. So it's not like there's one that we use, but we do like the Dell servers. I'll admit that. We've just always had good luck with them. It's a product territory we're familiar with. So we do put some of the smaller ones in there. It really depends on that. We don't do that much Linux here. I thought about doing a video talking about that. I'm a Linux enthusiast. I only use a limited amount of Linux with our clients. We're not a Linux support house. And I think because I've done a lot of videos on Linux tools, because it's stuff I use or play with, or the fact that we run XCP-ng based on Linux, people assume we just must be some Linux. Actually, we're from the business side, we're an MSP, and our clients use Windows. So most of the management's all Windows stuff. OpenSense is a fork of pfSense, so I use the original. Yes, the iDRAC is really nice in a Dell. We always get the enterprise iDRAC. It just makes life easier for managing things. When will TrueNAS get kernel space WireGuard? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't really use VPN inside of my NAS. NAS and VPN, other than for lightweight connectivity for management, I just don't use it. So I always look at VPN as a firewall or a standalone server for if you have some high-end application. But it's either integrated in a firewall or its own separate server because you don't want it in the firewall. But for the most part, I don't look at VPN as something on my NAS. I think they threw it in for functionality because that's how you do the true command. It uses WireGuard, which is great. But it's not like I think it needs super speed because all True Command does, I've talked a little bit about it before. The only thing True Command is doing some basic queries and getting some stats. It needs a reliable VPN, but it doesn't need a high bandwidth VPN at all. We use the SolarWinds stack to monitor HTTPS traffic for clients. Yeah, Supermicro definitely has some good pricing. It comes down to some of the warranties, though. Yeah. Thoughts on Ansible? Use Ansible. It's great. There's my thoughts. If you prefer Supermicro HTML5, well, yeah, the iDRAC is more expensive. The Supermicro is nice. It comes down to... It comes down to like how you want to manage it. I have some Supermicro stuff here. Matter of fact, some of the FreeNAS Mini is built on a Supermicro style platform. It's good too. Isn't pfSense done for? Yes, every time they do something. I remember it was it 2017? It was the end of pfSense, and 2016 was it was AESNI. That was the end of it. That was done. If you're done with it, then don't use it. I don't know what to tell people who tell me it's done all the time. If you think it's done, don't use it. I'm fine with that. I can't win with some people. Oh, you do replication over WireGuard. Well, yeah, there's that. We pretty much only deploy pfSense as hardware. There's not many times at all because it just becomes a pain. It adds too much complexity. Excuse me. Adds too much complexity, and hardware is cheap. Relatively speaking to what downtime costs clients, what am I saving? Even if I bought, an XG7100, putting a pair of HA7100s and spending a few $1,000s. Oh, hold on, let me save you a few dollars and stick it in your virtual stack. Then every time we have to reapply a patch to your virtual stack, we got to take out the internet. Try doing that remotely. That's not fun. I mean, you can build an HA virtual stack. I know there's some way you can do that, but I don't know. It just seems easier to have a hardware firewall. Yeah, reboot VM while you wait for it to do. And what if that patch update didn't apply and it causes some problem? And yeah, hardware firewalls have just feel more reliable to me. And maybe I'm just too old school and old in my ways. But when you're managing a lot of things remotely, remotely managed firewalls that are built in stacks, I just don't see the cost savings that much. I have a friend who likes 3CX. I haven't really used it. So that's my thoughts on 3CX. My friend likes it. I think pfSense in a VM works great. I definitely run my virtualization, like my lab stuff. Oh yeah, that's the best way to play with it is I have it in a VM. It works great in XCP-ng. It works in VMware. Those are great ways to learn about it because it's easy to snapshot, it's easy to update, it's easy to break, reload, or fork, and do all the fun things you can do in a virtual machine. I think for a lab, I love it, but for a production environment, I don't like it as much. And, there's a good argument for people building home labs to use it because they want to have everything in one server. Cool, because they don't have the budget or the space or whatever other reason, and they want to dive deep. It's a good learning experience because you can learn a lot diving into it like that, passing through hardware and everything else. Anything from Floatplane. I haven't hit them up again. I thought about waiting till I hit 200,000 subscribers. Maybe then they care. I don't know. I do not own a PS5, Xbox, and I don't plan on getting one. Yeah. How do you start in your career? How do you know so much? Oh, that. I just been working in this career for 25 years. There's not a spot I picked up all this knowledge. This is 25 years of working in tech. Switch is better. Yes. MikroTik and Ubiquiti. Yes and yes. That's too hard of a question to answer. There's actually someone that took the time on my forums. There's a debate going on right now in my forums about that. And there's a lot to it. It's not like there's a simple answer. It depends on your use case. Start at the bottom, play your way to the top. Yeah. Well, I don't know about I'm not quite an encyclopedia. It's just the fact that I've been working in this industry for this long. And it fascinates me. And man, it sounds harsh, but I do admit too, I guess Elon said this the other day, since we've been talking about Elon, is someone says, well, how do I get some enthusiasm in an entrepreneur? And he goes, if you're not enthusiastic, don't be an entrepreneur. And I've actually said things like that when people come up to me, not quite that harsh, but it's one of those things that it's not about getting started in tech. When people say, I have no passion for technology, how do I get passion for technology? I'm like, maybe this isn't your thing? I don't know. I am just excited about whatever technical things I can play with all the time. They're fascinating to me. Whatever I can dive into, doing this, doing that. Can I make this work? Can I say, ooh, look, a new VPN. Let me play with it. I am bouncing from thing to thing because it absolutely keeps me going. I have the drive to do it. I have no problem sitting down and reading a book on something. Well, digital book, I should say, not that. I don't know how to motivate people into it. I love teaching people about it because I'm sharing my ideas, sharing my passion. But if you go, I don't want to really watch your boring firewall videos. How do you get me excited about firewalls? Because I'm not excited about firewalls. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. That's really, becomes kind of a challenge. Did you ever deploy a very isolated business site which can only connect with DSL LTE? Not really. I'm not in too many rural areas, so that really hasn't been an issue. We have some customers that have had low bandwidth in the past. I mean, it is what it is. You're limited by the bandwidth. You can only do the things you can do, and that's it. I don't know. There's not. Yeah, if you're not passionate about technologies, you can go work in the garden. That's true, too. Deployed MS always on VPN. I don't know what that is. That's the way. I'm always excited about this stuff. And I don't mind pointing, when I meet people who are excited, I don't mind pointing them in a direction because they're excited. How do I learn more about firewalls? I'm like, oh, look, I made a video about it. That makes it easy, right? So that hopefully helps. I don't know. Or doesn't help. Random question, but what is the I/O delay with VMs? Having trouble wrapping my head. Depends. Do you have a slow hypervisor? There is some delay. There is... For the hypervisor, it has certain levels of overhead versus running on native hardware, if that's the ask. So yeah, there is some speed loss once you virtualize something because you've virtualized it. So, but that's not like it's 1 millisecond or 2 milliseconds. There's not like an answer to that question. Always on VPN is replacement for direct access. What's an always on VPN? Like a site-to-site VPN that you just leave on all the time? What do I recommend as a hypervisor? I like XCP-ng. Oh, do you think it's easier to get an IT nowadays compared to 10 or 20 years ago? Way easier. So I started in the 90s, and the only way to start in the 90s is just physically, I knocked on doors. I went to places. I asked, are you guys hiring? I read a book once. Like, I can't even reference much knowledge I had. I read a book. I'm graduated from high school, and I'd like to work on computers because they're neat. I kept getting in trouble in school because I kept hacking them. So, and hacking computers back in the 90s was really confusing to people because that was not much of a term used. Think about this. I went to school in the 90s and 80s. So, and I had limited access to technology. I didn't go to some school that had a lot of computers. I went in suburbia Detroit area here. They just didn't have that much technology. So it was really hard to find a job back in the 90s that was related to tech at all. Matter of fact, the vocational school I went to is I'm a trained machinist in tool and die. That's actually my vocation that I chose, but I ended up in computers. Now there's so many places hiring. I hear all the time, I hear from people, and a few of them, one of them, a local person I'm friends with, my friend became my friend because he started watching videos, went from working in the factory to a cybersecurity career that pays very, very well north of 6 figures. And he did it all in about 4 or 5 years, maybe. And he started watching some of my videos. He said that helped him understand some of the firewalls better, et cetera, et cetera. And then he did take some classes. So there's more opportunity in tech now than there was when I started. So I would say yes. The fact that there's people out there, many people out there offering online classes for training that didn't even exist 25 years ago, I would say that makes it easier to get into tech. The fact that you can watch so much content for YouTube, and the only thing you have to do is watch some commercials and then make sure you complain about the fact that YouTube has commercials. That's my favorite comment, is these commercials on YouTube are terrible. I agree. That's why I buy YouTube Red. I do reply to those comments. I'm like, buy YouTube. I still call it YouTube Red. It's now called YouTube Premium. I pay for the version of YouTube that doesn't have those stupid commercials because I agree, they're terrible. But this is how the system works. You have to watch stupid commercials. You get to watch some cool content. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Let me follow how many questions I missed on that. So yes, it's easier. Yes, virtualization is awesome. It is. It blows me away. Virtualization is my favorite, one of my favorites for just fascinating technology. How you can, containerize an entire operating system and move it live between systems. That is, from 25 years of technology, that has been one of those innovations that I think, one, it has reshaped things a lot, and it's great. Oh yes, I did have a 33.6 modem back when I started. That certainly was limiting. But yeah, it's really fascinating how virtualization works. It's definitely one of those things that just, I think a lot about it, and I love it. It just fascinates me. Let's see. Having to find an issue people post. Don't be mistaken, Tom. A lot of companies aren't actually willing to take people in. They demand years of working experience for entry level. It's not easy. No, you have to keep looking. There are plenty of places. I know a lot of people that have. My friend, he doesn't even his current job that pays as well as does. It's an out-of-state job. I have a lot of friends that just work remotely. Completely. Matter of fact, I don't know if you know this about Huntress, but they have, I don't remember exactly how many employees. They all work remotely, by the way. Huntress is like a remote company. So, yeah, YouTube Premium, like Corey Thompson said, well worth the cost.
What's wrong with it out of curiosity?
File transfers to NAS are really slow. That's diving deep into whatever's causing your slow issue with the hypervisor. I don't know. Generally, I get full line speed out of networking. Yes, Jay's got a great channel. Jay from Learn Linux TV. He dives deep into a lot of the Docker stuff. There's so much knowledge put out there now to get into it, and there's places hiring. Jay, he did a video about his career, and Jay's someone who's not spent his whole life dedicated to technology. Jay has a great job being a Linux admin, essentially, and at his day job, besides creating all the content that he does. So, yeah, one of my first firewalls was IPCOP. I've been into software-designed firewalls for a very long time. Fixing CAD stations, yeah. Let's see. Yep. There are people at the door. So there's a fun thing. If you ever come by my office during a live stream, Steve might let you in. I'm not people in. Oh, yes, live Docker. Watch tons of videos and apply. It takes a lot of determination. That's one thing that I think people are used to not running around and asking everyone and knocking on doors as much. It's not like the first door I knocked on hired me, or the third one, or I don't remember how many doors. I literally lost track. Someone told me once, CEO of an old company I used to work for, I liked what he said when he told me, he says, Tom, I think everyone should do vacuum cleaner sales before they actually get a career in sales at all. I'm like, vacuum cleaner sales? And he was a vacuum cleaner salesperson when he was younger. And he says, you'll knock on as many as 200 doors or more before you get one person to buy your vacuum. One person. And it's the same thing, insert name of any odd sales job like that. Once you get so used to rejection, and there's a lot of psychology probably behind this, you're like, whatever, they said no. What are you gonna do? Knock on the next door? But you knocked on 200 doors. Yep. And so many people get discouraged after like 10 doors or 20 doors. And I'm still talking about physically knocking on doors too. Like I just went in places until I found someone to hire me. It takes a lot. So. Buffering, lagging, lots of lag. Oh no. Back, now stable. I don't know what caused that. So, yeah, you do have to have proper drivers for, or you will have I/O delay. That's an important aspect here. If you virtualize something, it needs drivers. Worth purchasing certain roles. For a home user, probably not. Business, maybe, but yeah. Yep. Hey, me and Corey Thompson have the sime background. Used IP cop. Finally switched over to pfSense. My transition was Mandrake Firewall, which would have been like 2000. Then I moved to IP cop, and then I moved to I can't remember if I used MonoWall before I got into pfSense. I can't remember if it was like IP cop then that. In between before I switched fully there, I was using Endian Firewall, but I don't even know if Endian Firewall is a thing anymore. That was like back in 2005 or 4. My history with Linux goes back 25 years too, which is weird. I still built a company not doing Linux because that's harder. I built a company fixing Windows computers because that's more common. It's more of a niche business. And my staff, by the way, are only a couple of them do Linux. They're not as much Linux. Only 2 of them are somewhat Linux savvy. It's not our mainstay here. I'm just the Linux nerd. Yes, for XCP-ng, it is important, especially if you're using Windows, to have the drivers loaded. You can turn on the Windows Update, and that fixes that. So. SmoothWall. I remember SmoothWall as well. SmoothWall and an IP cop. I'm trying to remember which one I used first. IP cop I remember liking the best. Yes, you created a business around Patch Tuesday. Yeah, well, fair enough. What? I don't recommend mounting remote file systems over VPN. That seems like a terrible idea. I don't recommend doing it. How's that? Drivers for TrueNAS on VM. I don't think I would run TrueNAS on a VM. I think that's a terrible idea. Everyone asks me about it. I don't think, same answer all the time. There are challenges that come with virtualizing TrueNAS. Someone found a few bugs that were patched in XCP-ng to help with TrueNAS. There's a write-up by Oliver Lambert on it, but it's still there. It's going to be where you'll find more issues. If you're not an experienced user, you just want to get started with TrueNAS, then don't do it that way. And TrueNAS shouldn't. Here's the thing: when you're running Linux inside, like let's say XCP-ng, whatever hypervisor you're running, Linux usually has some type of driver support. In the case of XCP-ng, for example, you can load all the drivers right in there. I don't think it needs anything for storage. I am less clear whether or not there's actual. Wait, I take that back. There are some BSD drivers you can load for better network performance for running things in XCP-ng. I can't speak to other hypervisors whether or not they have drivers for BSD. So I guess it depends what hypervisor you're using. So yeah, it should work. What about Open Media Vault? I don't use Open Media Vault, so I don't know. If Open Media Vault doesn't support ZFS, it seems to be targeted more towards smaller, lightweight devices. So if that's your use case, then Open Media Vault may be for you. I just don't use it because I don't really want to take the time to learn another storage system. I'm familiar with Synology. I'm familiar with TrueNAS. I am not familiar with some of the other ones. Oh, you know, I don't know if there's an interest in this. Someone reached out to us because they wanted help with it. So we set it up real quick because I've done it before, but I never did the video on it. I lab things out all the time because, you know, that's what you do. But this is something that I don't know if I should do a video on, and it's right here. This is Multipath IO set up on TrueNAS. So this is iSCSI Multipath. Here's the multi-home list, the two different networks it's attached to. And what this allows you to do is have both for some extra bandwidth between her, but you set up two different networks and you connect two different connections so that the system can talk over either one of these connections if one fails. And this is Multipath IO. I thought about talking about it specifically for iSCSI. Someone wanted some help with it, but they weren't using TrueNAS, and I told them I can't guarantee that I can make it work without TrueNAS. I know how to make it work in TrueNAS. I'll know how to work it in Synology, I'm pretty sure. I haven't set one up in Synology, but I'll test it. But I didn't know if this is something someone has an interest in or not. I generally use NFS, but I did spin this up just to prove I could do it and run this on a multipath instance. So let me know if there's some interest in doing a video on that while I'm covering all the storage stuff. No, XCP-ng, I don't think can do live migration between AMD and Intel. You have to have the VM powered off, I'm pretty sure. If you can pass through SAS SATA to the TrueNAS, shouldn't it work? It should. And that's where someone found another bug doing it. I actually had seen one of them. The pass-through got set up with an LSI card, but it kept giving checksum errors. But you reload the system with TrueNAS natively, it didn't do it. If you had the system loaded with XCP-ng and let XCP-ng just handle the drives, it never got checksum errors. But passing through the drives to TrueNAS would randomly produce checksum errors. We don't know. It should have worked. I can tell you everything looked right, but we kept having bugs with it. I've done testing with this. I never did a video on it because then it just leads to all these people who have all these problems with it and complain. And I got to admit, my own lab testing didn't turn out so well when I tested it. And I said, but I know some people told me it worked fine for them, but other people said it didn't. But I don't know what the difference is. And there's so many variations. All I know is it seems to be less of a good idea. And therefore, I don't recommend it outside of a lab environment. If you want to do it in your lab at your own risk, awesome. I would never do something like that in a production environment. Synology, yeah, we talked about Synology locking. See earlier video, see video from Serve the Home. let's see. Did Synology once they started locking out older NAS devices from OS updates? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, pass-through certainly defeats some of the virtualization advantages, because now you certainly aren't going to do an HA setup like that, because you can't pass through the hardware simultaneously on two different systems, so you break the concept of HA. It's pass-through has its place, as someone said. That's the best way to describe it. There's unique use cases for it, but yeah. No, we have no customers deploy with Nebula. I threw out Nebula because I think it's a fun network engineering thing to play with. I had great conversations with the developer and thought raising awareness would be kind of cool. And I just found it kind of neat to play with and setting up things to solve problems. It's more of one of those solution recommendation things more so than likely to deploy. I don't have any customers that presently solves a solution for. I have one that might. I was actually consulting with another company recently, and I think it might be an option for them, but they also might I think they're just going to go with zero tier because it's developed and has an installer and a web interface that works really well. Nope, I have not done KMP key stores. I usually do, I encrypt VMs themselves, not the hypervisor. And then for the storage side, I encrypt the drives on the TrueNAS with encryption. That's where I handle encryption when it's an external storage server. TrueNAS is pretty much one of my favorite go-tos for high-end storage servers for virtualization. It just works. Back to like this device over here. This is booted. Not that it took long to boot. But if we do this and start running some tests on this, getting some speed, blah, blah, blah. Oh, 10,000 IOPS. Yay. That was fast. This is how that multipath IO looks. So go to stats. And we transferred about 190 megs right here on this VM running that. So we can probably, what else can I do? I can probably write out some, wrong one. Too many windows open. There we go. Go out here and we'll write out something. I think I have something here for speed test. We'll just write out a big file. 742 megs a second. So it's not bad. It's decent speed on this. And if we log into my TrueNAS that this is attached to, and we go to the reports, and let's look at specifically network. Hey, look, IX0 and IX1, the two separate interfaces. And there we go. This is me booting it, and you can see it's paired, so the data went across both interfaces. The load balancing is occurring. What we're going to do now is unplug it. So reach over here. All right, we just had a simulated failure by Tom pulling out the plug. So now we're just going to run those same tests over again. Let me go over here, run this a couple times. By the way, the VM didn't die. Hey, look, the VM's even still reasonably fast. All right. That's because each one of these links are 10 gig. We're not even saturating a 10 gig link, so. All right, we've run that. Let's run it one more time, let it purge and run. Then we'll go back and refresh the networking. So, jails. Go over here to NFS. Oops, not NFS, derp. Network. This interface got all the traffic now instead of part of the traffic. So there is the peak, and because all the traffic's here, it's a little bit higher. So this is how that failure works. This has allowed us to have a target that failed, and this is why I thought about doing a video on it. So I might do some more of these failover videos just to talk about this, because this is supported in XCP-ng. You can do full, NFS, iSCSI multipathing. It's supported in XCP-ng, it's supported in TrueNAS. It's another way to have some redundancy, so you have two separate switches. I thought about doing how we build out some of those more extensive systems. And by the way, to recover it, you just plug it back in. Oh, let's see. What did I miss here? Let's see. Have you ever worked with VM encryption? Yep, I answered that question. So, what specs does your XCP jersey have? Seems like a beast. No, it is certainly not a beast. What is the specs of it? Who wants to laugh with me on this one while we guess the specs? I think I can see it right here. This is a Dell Optiplex 9020. Yes, that's what it looks like. It's just a Dell Optiplex 9020. It's on the ground. I think it's on a camera view, but let's see what processor's in this thing. Not much of one, by the way, for those wondering. Does it say? I thought it said right here where the processor is. Maybe not. Is it listed under advanced? Yeah, there we go. That's a beast, man. i7 40. What does this even score? Whoops. So this is scores 7,000, so it's not terrible, but it's certainly not amazing. So yeah, no, it's not a beast. Yeah, yep, multipath IO. This isn't load balancing. It's not even set up in LACP. It's two single 10 gigs connected on separate networks. Yes, I will be. Maybe I'll do a pfSense router build. Why MPIO instead of LACP? Because it's cool. Multipath IO versus LACP, there's some debates about it. I usually, if I was going to do this, would use LACP, but it kind of depends. Someone asked us about, and it was because of the configuration they wanted, it was iSCSI. I actually prefer NFS over iSCSI, so. OpenSense doesn't have Squid, Proxy, or WireGuard in kernel space. Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't know they didn't have Squid Proxy, but I don't use Squid Proxy. The WireGuard implementation they're using is the user space one. I don't use TP-Link in production. Usually we use UniFi and Cisco and other ones. Any word on the new development for SCLR? I don't know. LACP does require the switch to cooperate. MPIO, as I understand it, and there's someone who has a better write-up than me, and I got to make sure I articulate it properly, you can get some better performance numbers out of MPIO than you can out of doing it with a... MPIO is going to offer you better performance than LACP because it's letting the iSCSI protocol handle it. So that's the reason why. And I'm going to push the door closed. I don't know why my staff has accidentally opened the back door. Not sure why they opened it. Anyways, cold air was coming in and like blowing over me. That's why I was like, ooh. Yeah, multi-channel, this is where also I've done a handful of videos on LACP, and that is where more confusion comes in. The more confusion that comes in related to that is because the people think if you take two 20 gig connections or two 10 gig connections, you get a 20 gig connection, but you don't. And I already have, if you look up LACP in Synology, LACP in TrueNAS, LACP in UniFi, and LACP in pfSense, you'll have a bunch of better perspectives where I kind of break some of those concepts down of how that works. And a lot of it has to do with the streams that you're using more than anything else. I have not used any of the TNSR stuff from the Tinsor, I believe is what they call it, from Netgate. I think it's neat. I don't have any expertise in it. Oh, Tinsor will just move over to Debian. There's actually more than one option. So any project based on CentOS that now there's a problem from Red Hat, the solution path is a couple options. This actually includes quite a few places, including Security Onion. What you have is the the CentOS problem, and so many things are being integrated to it, but don't worry, it's open source, and I think Rocky Linux is one potential option. There's a few other forks that are based loosely on the CentOS project, so there's not like a lot of modification that'll have to be done. Other companies will fully jump ship and head over to Debian because they're like, I'm just going to go live in this world over here because that problem doesn't seem to exist in the Debian world. So yeah. Yes, so 2 times 10 gig LACP equals 20 gig switch, but 10 gig single stream. That's the distinction, is each stream is limited to the capacity of each point, but if you have multiple streams, that's a problem. And this is where you get problems with things like SMB. One computer can only pull X, but 2 computers can also pull it because it'll share between the pipes. There's a lot more to it. It doesn't just make one magically bigger network interface. Right. Yeah, and the good point with MPIO. MPIO is multiple path. If you noticed, we go back over here, actually into the XCP-ng. When you go to the storage servers on this, the TrueNAS SCSI one here, you notice that they're on separate networks. So let me zoom in a little bit. So the networks are different. So that's on the 192 network over here, and that's on the 172 network for the other one. So that is a difference for the multi-home list when you set these up. So that's, yeah, definitely a difference the way these are designed versus it's not on the same network. It's aware, and the XCP-ng server is talking to TrueNAS on 2 different network interfaces. So hopefully that clear. That's why I said it gets complicated talking about all this stuff. That's why I try to these are what makes these videos a bit harder to do, because I gotta have some visuals. I usually cite a few articles so people can dive deeper, because if I tried to read the entire article before even doing a tutorial, the video alone would be 2 or 3 hours for explaining all the theory and all the practical stuff and then showing you actually the tutorial on how to do it. That's a lot of reason I do. Like, some people get it and go, and I'm happy with not reading the article. I'm happy that it works. Show me how to set it up. Other people are like, I really want to know how this works. I'm the person who knows how it works. Is my, I like to know not just that it works, but I love how it works. That's my tech fascination. So I read a lot of these articles all the time. Is there a way to make a bigger interface? Buy a bigger interface. Buy a 100 gig interface. That's why they make them. Well, let's see. Yes, there is stacking of switches to get redundancy. There's so many different things you could do. Use jumbo packets. Well, that's a different approach. But yes, you can use some jumbo packets. Will dedicated Synology hardware offer better energy consumption? So far, I would say that the Synologies we've tested, generally speaking, seem to be relatively low energy. I think it's easier for a vendor to build something that's kind of unique, and Synology seems to lean towards lower powered servers because they don't have anything extra on them. They've kind of focused, and when a vendor controls the hardware layer, I think they can do a pretty decent job of creating a lower power device. But it's not just as easy. You got to look at the power wattage, look at the usage, think about the hard drives you put in there. Obviously, putting spinning drives in there uses more power than the SSDs, so there's always a lot of factors. Buy a bigger one, yes. Certifications, they can really help your career. Some places use them as a way to, wall you in whether or not you want to get in there. They just say, cert, all right, you can knock on all the doors you want, but without some certifications, that is just how some places do it. I have a video I did where I discussed certifications. Yes, go from a 10 gig to a 40 gig to the new 100 gig. Because if it was as simple as just bonding them together, we would just bond together a bunch of 10s and that would be simple. But no, they now make 100 gig switches. So yeah, which are awesome. I am winding this down. I have 300 people and 154 likes. If a few more of you could click the like button, that would be great. Cisco does love certifications. Yes, they do. Cisco likes not being as simple. They just rely on things being a little bit complex, and that's how that works. But, whatever. I'm not here to debate Cisco's business practices. But is there any questions before I wind this down? Any final questions before I wander off? Because I'm trying to keep these live streams. I go 2 hours. I figure that's good enough. So roughly 2 hours. I'm 2 hours in. Started at 4. It is 6:08 p.m. here. Firewalls do not really help with DDoSing. If you're getting DDoS, someone upstream has to help you with that. Contact your ISP. Whoever provides you internet will help you more with DDoS than a firewall. Pizza time. Soho recommendation router, I go with pfSense. pfSense and Untangle are kind of our go-tos for a lot of firewalls. We really like the pfSense and Untangle. They are very feature-rich. They solve a lot of problems for people. They have a lot of the things people are looking for. If you want the dead simple basic, there's plenty. Whatever the vendor provided you from your ISP. If you want something good, though, pfSense and Untangle are solid choices. What beer will I put in the glass? I have something at home that's different. I don't remember what kind it is. I like it, though. I don't drink much, so I'm a very occasional drinker. I'm more of a whiskey than a beer person, but I do occasionally have a beer. If you're building a home lab, building it yourself from scratch is probably the best way to learn. That was my recommendation. Do from scratch, ground zero, build it all up yourself. So I used IP Copy years ago. I did not use it when it turned into IP Fire. Yeah, this would probably fit a handful of beers. This is my new water glass. People kept complaining as the other one said Paycor on it. They sent me a glass. I started using it. And then I'm like, I'm just going to use something plain so there's no thoughts that someone sponsored it. This is brought to you by this plain glass of water. Oh, yes. Whiskey by the Fire live streams. Yeah, sometimes maybe I'll do a couple from home where I do that. I thought about doing another live stream on a Friday or Saturday night and do a tech hangout thing. I might do some more of that. So, favorite whiskey. Maker's Mark, Jack Daniels. I love both of them. Those are both and one can argue one's a higher end than the other. I don't know. I just like it. That'd be a lot of vodka if I didn't. Because this was, roll back to the beginning of the live stream. I think it was up to here, and it's down to here. So that's the other reason for ending a live stream. After I talk for 2 hours and consume large quantities of water, I need to go let the water out. So wild turkey. All right. I haven't used IP Fire, so I don't have an opinion. Try it out. That's the best thing about building a lab, getting to try all the new fun VPN tools out there. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for joining. We're down to the off topics of whiskey. Hi, Wes. I've tried a lot. I have quite a few different whiskeys in my house. I've even tried the peanut butter whiskeys. Those are interesting too. Yes. So maybe I will do sometime a Saturday or Sunday tech stream. I drink a lot of water. I drink coffee in the morning, tea in the day, water throughout, water again, and at night usually tea, but sometimes I will have a little bit of there. I don't use OpenSense, so I don't have an opinion. OpenSense is a fork of pfSense. Why would I use the fork? If you like OpenSense, go use it. I don't care. They're two different products, and each of them are free downloads. Japanese whiskeys are good. I have had Japanese whiskeys. I'm not an official on them, but they're definitely good. So, all right. I'm going to wander off, and yeah. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Come out. Please try OpenSense. I am not trying OpenSense, by the way. I have no use case for that. So, I don't have time for it. I barely have time to get all the stuff I do now. I certainly don't have time to learn another firewall. So soon as upstream, yeah, maybe one day the OpenSense will start upstream contributing. I don't know. That'd be nice. Whatever. That's up to them. It's a free world. Do what you want sometimes. All right, and thanks.